All right, let's get right into a massive geopolitical question. Can a superpower's decline be massively sped up by just one single catastrophic mistake? Today we're exploring a pretty chilling scenario, one that asks if the United States is maybe sleepwalking towards its very own Suez moment.
You know, the historian Edward Gibbon, the guy who literally wrote the book on the fall of Rome, he knew that empires don't just collapse overnight. Nope, it's usually this long, slow burn. But he noticed something else, that sometimes one single event, one monumental screw-up, can act like gasoline on that fire, turning a slow decay into a sudden inferno.
So, let's take that idea and run with it. Let's look at a hypothetical scenario that people in foreign policy are actually talking about. Just imagine it's February 2026. The US and Israel launch a joint attack on Iran. Could this be it? Could this be that one catastrophic mistake that kicks off a rapid decline? To really understand just how devastating that could be, we've got to look back in time at the historical blueprint. So let's rewind the clock. We're going back to 1956 and something called the Suez Crisis. And trust me, this event is a perfect, almost haunting example of how a superpower can miscalculate so badly that its global standing just shatters, almost overnight.
So here's the story. The British Empire, right? They were the aging lion, still thought of themselves as the top dog, and they felt their economic lifeline was threatened when Egypt took control of the Suez Canal. So what did they do? They teamed up with France and Israel, and they invaded. But they made one huge, fatal mistake. They forgot to ask permission from the new top dog, the United States. What is just wild when you look at this timeline is the speed of the power shift. President Eisenhower over in the US was absolutely furious that he wasn't consulted. So he used America's massive economic power to basically force the British to pack up and go home. And in that moment, it became crystal clear to the entire world who the new boss was. And just like that, Britain's time as a global superpower was done. America's had just begun.
And when you lay it out side by side like this, the parallel is, well, it's pretty uncanny, isn't it? On the left, you've got the British lion, a dominant but fading power. On the right, you have the American eagle, facing a really similar dynamic. The big question is, if the US stumbles just like Britain did, who's the new power waiting in the wings to take its place?
Now, to really get why that hypothetical 2026 attack would be so incredibly devastating, we have to understand the system the U.S. built to stay on top for the last 50-plus years. And at its core, it was all based on a really simple but unbelievably powerful bargain.
The key word you'll hear is hegemony. It sounds kind of academic, I know, but it's really just a fancy word for leadership. See, after World War II, the U.S. figured out that the smartest way to lead wasn't just with military might. It was by creating a global system, a set of rules, where other countries could prosper too. By helping nations grow within its system, the U.S. locked in its own spot right at the very top.
And in the Middle East, this leadership took a very specific shape, the petrodollar system. The deal was beautifully simple. The region's unstable, right? So the U.S. went to the Gulf nations and said, look, we'll be your bodyguard. We will handle your security. The price for this protection? Just do one thing for us. Sell all of your oil, the most important commodity in the world, only in US dollars. And boom, the payoff was huge. It created this constant global demand for the dollar, giving the US incredible economic power, and it gave the Gulf the stability it needed to grow.
Okay, but here's the crucial point. That system, that grand bargain that basically defined the world for decades, it's breaking down. The very foundation of American influence in the region is showing some really deep and pretty undeniable cracks.
And you don't have to look very hard to see the evidence. It's everywhere. I mean, you see it when your key allies start making side deals for their own security. You see it when they start openly talking about selling their oil in other currencies. That's a direct shot at the core bargain. And all this is happening while another power, China, is quietly getting cozier and cozier with everybody in the neighborhood.
And that brings us right back to our hypothetical 2026 attack. So you take this already wobbly, fragile system, and you throw what is essentially a geopolitical bomb right into the middle of it. An attack on Iran in this context isn't just another conflict. It would be like taking a sledgehammer to those cracks we were just talking about.
And it's the way this hypothetical attack happens that makes it the killer blow. Think about it. It's not a defensive war. It's launched in the middle of peace talks. That is a profound betrayal of trust. It's also completely unauthorized, with no backing from the UN or even its own Congress. To the rest of the world, that doesn't look like leadership. It looks like a superpower going rogue.
The immediate fallout is just global economic chaos. Iran retaliates. They shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is basically the world's energy jugular. So oil prices don't just go up, they go vertical. We're talking way past $100 a barrel, and that sends a devastating wave of inflation crashing over the entire planet.
And that bargain we talked about? It's not just broken, it's completely inverted. The promise was stability. The reality becomes chaos. The promise was protection. The reality is your allies getting hit in the crossfire. The promise was securing global trade. The reality is a global economic meltdown. The trust, the very glue that held this system together for over 50 years, gone, completely broken.
So what happens next? When the dust finally settles from this catastrophic mistake, what does the world even look like? Well, when one power basically shatters its own credibility, it creates a vacuum. And vacuums in geopolitics, they never stay empty for long. This chart really visualizes the inevitable result. As America's influence goes off a cliff, a huge vacuum is created. So who benefits? China. The power that stayed out of the fight, the one that's been steadily building economic ties for years. For the Gulf nations, feeling betrayed and totally vulnerable, who else are they going to turn to?
And the wild part is, China wouldn't have to fire a single shot. It would just have to show up. It would walk right into that void and offer the one thing America just destroyed: stability. China becomes the peacemaker, the investor, the new essential partner, the reliable adult in the room that America just proved it could no longer be.
And so we end right back where we started. Just like the Suez Crisis in 1956 marked the end of the British era and the dawn of the American one, a massive miscalculation in Iran could mark the end of American dominance. Which leaves all of us with the ultimate question. If this is how one era ends, who gets to write the rules for the next one?